Scholastic is making it easier than ever to ban books written by diverse authors about queer people, immigration, racism, and more. 25 days ago, Reddit user Maze Pond published this post stating that they'd recently learned of what some are calling a bigotry button that Scholastic is allegedly offering school librarians. The claim is that Scholastic has gathered up books both written by and about anyone falling outside a cisgender heterosexual white norm and placed them in a separate collection in order to give school librarians an easier time opting out of inclusion. The books range from kindergarten to middle school, and apparently during the discussion school librarians are having with Scholastic, the book fair company is specifically asking if librarians want to include diverse books. Immediately, people began asking for vetted published sources to back up these claims. Numerous educators and school librarians came through attesting to the veracity, stating that they too had been part of these conversations. Then, 2 days ago, after weeks of public pressure, Scholastic released this message. It begins by stating, quote, "Scholastic provides diverse titles to every book fair." It then goes on to state that there are legislative book bans either enacted or pending in over 30 states here in the US, acknowledging that the majority of those bans regard queer titles or books that discuss issues of racism in our country. Then they state that they did indeed create a separate collection called Share Every Story, Celebrate Every Voice. They even acknowledge that this collection was part of planning calls happening in advance of shipping a fair in order to give schools the option to opt out of the risk of including diverse voices. They even admit that they believe as a company that their choices are to either segregate diverse voices, making it easier to ban us, or to not sell our books at all. Let me say that again. Scholastic believes it is either segregation or nothing. Of course, in an era where book bans are rampant and educators feel pressure from social media, parents, the community at large, and the students themselves to provide books that allow children to feel inspired, to learn, to be entertained, and to see themselves reflected on the page, it doesn't take much of a leap to see how tempting it might be for school librarians to simply opt out of inclusion. Now, this is nothing new, at least not to those of us who write or read books for children, teen, and young adults. Earlier this year, Maggie Takuta Hall, author of books such as the forthcoming The Siren, the Song, and the Spy, as well as Squad, bravely came forward to state that Scholastic wanted to license her book, Love in the Library, the true story of how her grandparents met and fell in love in a Japanese internment camp, for their book fair, as long as she censored any mention of racism. Now, how you're supposed to do that in a book about falling in love in a Japanese internment camp, I don't know, nor do I understand why you would ask such a thing, but I just write books. What do I know? Maggie's bravery highlighted what many people in publishing have known for several years now. Publishers value profit over everything. We'd all like to think publishers' motives are altruistic. There's this veneer of publishing that makes it all seem sweet, inclusive, supportive. They're here to help more stories get to more people, and that's sort of true, except it erases the greater truth that publishers are here to make money. Lots of money. And if they are presented with the scenario to either continue with their lucrative book fairs that reach countless children every year in nearly every school, or to have that wing of their business taken away due to these book bans, they'll take the former any day of the week. That money piece is actually quite important because when the average person hears that a book has been banned, they assume that the author just won the lottery. They assume that somehow that book will now become famous, make thousands of banned book lists, and be that much more sought after because it's now forbidden. And sure, I don't want to say that doesn't happen, but that is the exception by far. The truth of a banned book looks much more like this. These quiet conversations that happen between book suppliers who are looking to turn a profit and librarians and other booksellers who are looking to not get screamed at, protested, or have their already thin operating margins get even thinner by upsetting the public. If books by and about diverse people can quietly stop being distributed en masse, what then? Those authors can't afford to pay their bills. People will believe that the already fairly thankless job of being a writer isn't worth it and will be robbed of their stories. Publishers will take fewer and fewer books by queer authors, by authors of color, because we're a risk, because it's easier to erase us than support us, except for Pride Month, of course, when we get a shelf, except for Black History Month or Asian American Heritage Month or any of the other respective times throughout the year when publishers trot us out on their social media platforms to say, hey, look, we're one of the good guys. Look at all the Black people we know. See all the gays in our list? The author Claribel Ortega said it well over the weekend. She's a best-selling author. She's earned out her advance. She's feeling these impacts. So what chance does a new author have? What chance does a prospective author have? What's the solution? Buy banned books, yes, but more so, take this to the people in power. Demand that publishers stop using diverse authors and stories for good PR. Let your school's librarian know that you want your child to be exposed to diverse stories. Ask your local public library for these books as well. Find a local independent bookstore and buy books from them, and also ask them to stock diverse books. We have to stop censorship in its tracks. Otherwise, the only stories that will be told will represent a world without us. And I refuse to live in that world. Hope this helps.